So my name is Janan, and this is Eamon. I'll introduce your name. We are from Leeds. We're part of obviously IUS, and I am a dentist in terms of career. We have a daughter, a 2-year-old daughter, and yeah, well, that's sort of summarizes me.
Yeah, and then I work in various things, but mainly project management. So obviously live with my wife Janan in Leeds, and I'm the IUS chairman, and I've been for a few, this is my 3rd year actually. So Ayad, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so my name's Ayad. I'm also based in Leeds. Currently studying my master's in psychology. I'm doing that at King's College London, but doing that remotely from home. So based in Leeds for the year. Do you want me to talk about everything? Introduce like MS and all that kind of stuff?
I suppose we'll hear from Karim just very basic introduction, and then maybe we can come back and obviously start talking a bit more about your individual journeys and backgrounds.
Cool.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Yes, my name's Karim Lalji. I'm based in up here in Manchester, so yeah, very northern show today. I suppose what I do for a living is I'm a marketer, I suppose, involved in social media and marketing in general. Currently doing quite a lot of training, because it seems to have flipped the way things work. Seems to have flipped a little bit. Obviously, we're here today to talk about a very interesting subject and one very close to me. And my involvement with the IUS also goes back many, many years. I think probably volunteered and been involved in executive committees, and now have the pleasure of being a trustee as well. So very much looking forward to today, and really like the idea of, from a marketing point of view, really like this in conversation. It sounds very official and American.
Oh, I'm glad you approve.
Yeah, exactly. And it just in terms of to be more inclusive, right now we're in northwest London, so if that just so that the southerners don't feel alienated that we've got a bit of an guard going on. But yeah, as in, so you obviously touched a bit on sort of the topic, but I think we've said about this whole it's in various different forms how people sort of maybe describe whether it's a medical condition or like being differently able and that sort of thing. But maybe if you guys want to, Ayad, you were going to talk a bit about maybe MS in general. What does that actually mean? Because I suppose for those people who know someone or have experienced it themselves, that they might be a bit more aware. But I know that for myself, as in it's probably in my late 20s before I actually heard or knew a bit more about MS and what it even stands for and what it is and that sort of stuff. So yeah, without going too technical on us, just in layman's terms, what is MS?
Okay, MS stands for multiple sclerosis. It's an autoimmune condition. It's important to note that it's different for everyone. So for some people, it could present itself as like difficulty seeing or like loss of vision. Other people, it's more kind of motor movement, walking, using hands, dexterity, whatnot. And yeah, it's basically your body attacks its own nerves, and in doing so, whatever signals go from your brain to the different parts of your body don't manage to do that properly. So mine is like a motor condition. I have difficulty walking, and that's the part. So it's affected both my brain and my spinal cord. Like I said, it looks different for different people. So it's very random, and like they don't know the cause for it yet, and they don't necessarily have a treatment for it. They have disease-modifying drugs which help kind of stabilize it or control it, but there isn't a cure for it yet. So that's.
So do you know that stabilizing thing? So is that about it can like sort of slow it down, but it's not like a cure, like you say, or something that can recover. So if it's almost like the damage happens and then the damage is there and you can't really repair from it.
Yeah, exactly. So nerves are known for being like they don't repair themselves very easily like other parts of the body. And so the therapies, the drugs really will stop the body or like it'll try reduce the amount of further damage that the body does to itself. And again, like I said, it's different for different people, but the bodies react differently to particular medications. Some might work, some might not work. And so yeah, it's all quite uncertain. Like prognosis is uncertain, diagnosis is difficult. It's usually through like MRI scans and various other tests. So yeah, so that is it's a very confusing disease, and they don't know much about it. And trying to find out much more about it, but yeah, it's quite difficult to research.
And Karim, does that sort of stuff resonate with you? As in, Ayad mentioned how there's sort of like different types, if you like. So I don't know if you guys are, you know each other or know a bit more about sort of whether you're.
No, I think Ayad summarised it really well. I mean, in a very basic summary, when I speak to the lay person, I mean, I didn't even know what MS was when I got it, because when they told me you had MS, I was like, okay, so what is it? And you had to kind of start Googling and going away that way about it. But in a nutshell, like I said, basically it's an autoimmune system. So basically messages from the brains go to all parts of your body. So when you lift your hand, within split seconds or microseconds, your brain is telling you what to do. What happens with MS is that these messages to different parts of your body stop. So for me, or anyone who knows me, like for me, it predominantly affects my legs. So obviously you'll see me jetting about on a mobility scooter or something. So you can kind of see, so it just depends on where it affects you. There's probably about 20 different symptoms for MS. Some you can see and some you can't. In some respects, I feel quite lucky because you can see the scooter, so you can see, okay, this person's got a challenge in some way, so you can visibly see it. Some people with MS, you can't see the symptoms, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes and things that you don't quite pick up on. But that's about it. But I suppose the most frustrating thing is that there's no cause and there's no cure. So, and it affects about 120,000 people in this country, probably obviously a lot more worldwide. And unfortunately, it's probably coming more into the Asian subcontinent, Middle East, where initially when I got diagnosed, they were like, well, first of all, you're a bloke, and second, you're Asian, so we don't really know why you've got it. That used to be the mindset before. Now, obviously, Asian people are getting it, and it's becoming quite prevalent in places like India, the Middle East, and different parts. And I suppose that's where the culture comes in, because obviously disability, Indian culture, Arab culture, the religion, and it all becomes intertwined. But yeah, I'm sure we'll speak more about that. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell, if you like.
And do you guys both want to kind of walk us through your journey with MS, and kind of, how did it happen? How did it start? How was it for you, the whole, getting the diagnosis, going through that kind of process?
Yeah. So like Karim said, it's like they're kind of stereotypical people that you'd expect to get MS. So like late 20s, 3 times as likely in females as in males.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And so when I first went to the GP about symptoms in 2018, from then until the diagnosis itself was over a year, because I was male, I was young, I was like fairly active, healthy, and like they MS was like at the bottom of the list. And the way the NHS works is they don't try to diagnose you based on your symptoms. They rule off the things that it isn't, and then they're left with a final diagnosis.
Yeah.
But it was over a year that it took for them to finally like cross everything out and reach a conclusion of multiple sclerosis.
So does it not have like a distinct presentation in scans?
So the scans, in the scans, you can see like damage to the brain and the spinal cord. But there can be different reasons for that. Okay. So at first they thought it was more likely to be a viral infection or like a bacterial infection. And so they had me on like different medications for different things. And when none of that was working, they finally did something called the Spinal Tap, or lumbar puncture, I think is a medical term. And that's like the final test that they do, which, bear in mind, is not the greatest test to have done on you. It's like they literally put a needle into your back and then draw out some of the spinal fluid and examine it. But yeah, so it's not as easy to diagnose. It's not just a case of seeing damages in the scans. There are plenty of other things which kind of fall into the investigation.
And what was your initial symptom that prompted?
My initial symptoms, I was walking home from university, and my foot kept hitting the floor. And at the time, I just bought a new pair of shoes, so I thought I was like, oh, maybe I'm just getting used to the shoes. Then that was happening more and more often, and like it reached the point where it wasn't normal anymore. Like it wasn't just the shoes, regardless of what pair of shoes I wore, it was still happening. And it was literally just that's how it started off. So just like heaviness in my right leg in particular, and I just had trouble clearing the ground with each step. So that's when I first went to the GP, and
just how long would that take? Just in terms of, because I imagine like you sort of thinking, oh, you know, have I not been going? I've been missing leg day at gym or something like that, and whether it's something related to that sort of thing. But how long did it take for you to think, actually, I probably need to see a medical professional about this? This doesn't seem to be.
It was probably, I'd say, a couple of months.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, at the start, I didn't think anything of it, and like I didn't think it was something worth going to the doctor about. But when I went to the doctor, it was like the very typical vitamin D deficiency, iron deficiency, like go on this course of medication for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And like I said, because they didn't expect me, like I'm not this typical person to get MS. They spent a lot of time trying to figure out all the other things that I wasn't, which is why it took over a year. And in that year, in the years that followed as well, like each year there's like a significant deterioration of ability. So it's like every minute counts basically. And so I guess I can talk about the frustrations of all that stuff later in the show. But yeah, that's my journey in a nutshell.
Yeah, and so that's relatively recent, right? 2018, did you say is initially when?
2018 is when when I went to the GP for the first time, and then a year and a month later is when I got the diagnosis.
Right.
So March 2019, I was diagnosed.
Yeah. And so Kareem, then we've known each other for years, like from through IUS volunteering and that sort of stuff. And I'm probably trying to think the first time we actually properly met, but you know, well over 5 years for sure. And I think I've always remembered that you might have had a stick or on a scooter or something like that. So like obviously a longer period than Ayad. But how about you in terms of, you know, when you sort of came about and sort of got that understanding that you've got I
mean, like in this, I suppose it was over 2 periods. Initially it was back in 2000, 2001. I was playing football and I was sprinting and all of a sudden I'd just fall over. I mean, this is very small. You wouldn't even notice it. You'd think someone was diving or something just to gain favour with the referee, but I thought there's something strange.
Did you get a yellow card for simulation as well?
No, I just got a hurl of abuse from my friends. So it was, so I got this and I thought, I need to see a doctor. I mean, and just to cut a long story short, at that point, saw the doctor, saw the consultant, and he says, I've tested everything. There's literally no need to see me. You're dismissed. Don't come back again. Literally, they were his words. And I thought, okay, so maybe there was something in the air or something. Anyway, fast forward to around 2006, I'm thinking I've got a real problem now because I had walking along and all of a sudden my leg feels heavy and it's skipping. And I'm thinking the longer I walk, the worse it gets. And I noticed it when I was going to the gym and I'd sit in the sauna and then I couldn't even feel my leg. And then I realized that there's something with heat here. So when your body heats up, whether it be through exercise, through the weather or whatever it might be, this suddenly becomes a problem. So then I went through like a 9 month period, got diagnosed with MS. they have something called the McDonald's criteria now, which kind of is how they used to nothing to do with burgers or fries, but it's a way they kind of diagnose
I wasn't
MS
sure where
now.
you're going to go with this one, but yeah.
So yes, so and like I went, did everything, Googled it, and it was quite disappointing when I Googled it because everything was really negative, just saying you can't do this, you can't do that, and it was just very, very negative. And then I set about setting up an organisation, which I suppose I'm not sure if you were going to come to soon or later, but everything I was reading was really bad, and I didn't tell anybody because I was in what I call the MS closet. Kept it to myself. Only direct family or someone who needs to know. And because everything was really bad. There was a woman in on the press at the time who was taking the government to court for the right to go to Switzerland and kill herself because she had MS. And I was like, oh God, I'm not telling anyone I've got this because it's just like this stigma. I mean, I still wanted to go to work and get treated equally in terms of when I do a great job, yes, Kareem, you've done a great job. When I've done a bad job, you get a bit of a bollocking off your boss. I mean, I didn't want anything to change, but all this behind the scenes stuff wasn't great. So yeah, then I mean that was quite very negative. So yeah, from that I found an opportunity because I thought there is a need for some positivity here, but we can touch on that later or whenever you wish.
And were you in marketing at the time, and then did it affect your the way that you?
Well, at the time, I mean, I was always in marketing because that was what I did at university, post-grad, and a bit sad like that, like read articles on it and stuff like that, pass judgment on bits of marketing. But no, I was working as a senior manager for Tesco, and it was quite hard because they'd be like, it's not just one or two people in the office, you've got staff of 500 or 600 people. Everyone sees, oh, Kazzy, okay, or what's up with you? Is everything okay? And eventually you come up with elaborate excuses like flamboyant football injuries, and then I made him give me like a fancy crutch that footballers use, and I didn't want to be associated with this disability thing. And I think, so yeah, it impacted me work, and a lot of people say, would you ever tell them again? And because it affects work, and it doesn't affect work in a good way that you can get to appointments, but then chances of promotion become very remote, and you can see it, and it's always one of those like that American phrase. There's an American phrase where you don't have to tell them, don't you? So it's but it's yeah, it became challenging. Yeah, it's something like that. So part of me wishes I wouldn't have told them, but now I suppose it works out quite good now. But at the time, if someone's in work and they're relying on that work, you want to kind of be a bit clever about it and only say what you have to.
Yeah, so I think that's really interesting. Definitely worth us like diving in a bit more on. And I think because when you're talking a bit about some of the visible aspects and the invisible things, and now you start to see you see especially around on like disabled toilets and stuff that things like not every disability is obvious or something like that. And we talk about this mental well-being and mental health pandemic in a way, in terms of suicide rates and people who are struggling with mental health, and from the rich and famous to sort of the poor and destitute, is something that rightly so is getting more attention, and that people need to sort of think about and really be cognizant of. But I think what you just were describing is actually, there's a pretty big roller coaster in terms of coming to terms with it personally. How you started to sort of translate that, and
I suppose
we could talk a bit more around that. And I think it sounds like you turned into a positive in terms of opportunity for creating a new organisation that puts a bit more positive messaging around sort of the condition. But I imagine that's not something that overnight happens, and that there's a whole journey in that.
No, I mean there was a very I suppose challenging emotional cycle of change, because you want to stay as you're. Like I think I approached it in the wrong way. My main concern was this limp I've got, how do I improve it? I wasn't looking 10 years down the line where I had to use a wheelchair or a mobility scooter. I couldn't even bear to think about that. The thought of someone seeing me using crutches or a scooter was, I think, I don't know whether it's pride or whatever it is, you just didn't want to accept it. So I was focused on getting better, where my medical professionals are saying, listen, Kaz, you might need to rethink your thing, rethink the way I'm looking at things. But I couldn't. I think my mindset wouldn't allow it. I just want to power on and just keep going and doing as much as I can. And as you mentioned, with everything I read was negative. It was basically like, right, your life's over now. Either go to Switzerland and kill yourself, or stay at home and do nothing and watch TV for the rest of your life. And I was like, this is a real. I mean, I'm alhamdulillah, like, as someone who believes in God, we're quite strong-willed, and we know that whatever happens, this life's a test, and we're going on to somewhere else. That's always in your mind somewhere. But what this message, I thought this isn't the right message for someone else to hear. So I set about setting something up called Positive About MS, which talked about the positive sides of it, because I found that I was becoming more strategic in my thinking because I had to think of shortcuts and quick ways of achieving things. So I suddenly became more strategic, and there's lots of other things that I topped upon and found out about, and I got invited from the NHS, still do, well, before COVID, we would go every 6 months to talk to newly diagnosed patients about how they can take a positive approach. I mean, I could tell you loads more about it, but in a nutshell, we've got a community of about 25,000 people on Positive about MS now, and it goes from strength to strength. But it's great to see that lots of people are positive about MS, and they needed this outlet to take this positive and can-do approach. And even more recently, I suppose, I've been affected by things like, I don't know if you've read this book called The Unfair Advantage. I think there's someone from within our own communities, I think there's a chap called Hassan Kuba and Ash Ali. They wrote this book in a nutshell. I mean, this is not a plug for the book. They've not given me a free book or anything.
I'll let Hassan know that we've done that.
But in this,
if he sees a peak in his purchases, he knows where it came from.
yeah, well, no, I'll not take anything from him. I'll just claim it as some marketing I did and put it on a case study somewhere.
Yeah.
But so in that it says, work out your unfair advantage. And like I say, just being very quickly on it, I worked out that a lot of my customers in marketing are people who are affected, who have companies that have for disabled companies with products for disabled people, in some cases, and people who are involved in this and that. And you think, well, actually, if there was two people pitching for a job with a big wheelchair manufacturer, both marketing, both equally elated, but I turn up in my mobility scooter and that person turns up walking around, they'll think, well, this guy's probably got more of a chance of understanding what our customers' needs and wants are. So that's what the book helps you channel into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, what do you reckon, Ayad? I mean, do you resonate with any of the stuff I mentioned there?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it all happened so quick. So I was diagnosed in 2019. And at that point, I was still like cycling every day, and I was still able to do a lot of things. And then fast forward to 2.5 years, and like I use a wheelchair, and I don't go out if I don't have a wheelchair, and like I'm unable to. So like within the space of 2.5 years, like things have changed massively, and every time you try to adapt your mindset to come to terms with the new ability that you have, it gets worse, and then you have to readapt it and reevaluate it. And so it's like 2.5 years of like constantly changing goals, constantly changing outlooks, constantly like being able to adapt everything to this new situation that you're in. And like I can get like exhausting sometimes because it's like changes so much. Like even the idea of trying to build the right mindset, like at times it's tough, and it's like the situation keeps getting worse, and it's like very, very easy to fall into like a downward spiral. But I guess like keeping a positive mindset regardless of my situation has always been like my goal. So like I have to constantly change my goals and my ambitions and whatnot. But I'm always going to do that with a positive mindset, because I can't afford to do it without a positive mindset. Because like another thing about MS is stress is really, really bad for it. So if you're put in like a stressful position, then it just makes it so much worse. Right. And so I kind of don't have the liberty of feeling sorry for myself. It's always you're always working on yourself. You're always trying to keep a positive mindset. You're always trying to change the way you do things to still fit with your values and what you want to achieve in life. And I guess even like when it comes to volunteering, like before the diagnosis, I was like very, very active. I'd volunteer for different organizations, and I'd be at so many different events and speaking to so many different people. But now it's reached a point where I can't do all that stuff. But my value of supporting the community or volunteering or giving my time is still there. And so like I've had to figure out different ways of being able to do that. And so I get even like a podcast like this, for example, or like I've done a bunch of work with the MS Society as well. And it's kind of reevaluating how you do things, but with the same values. And like being able to volunteer does keep you in a positive headspace. It's what I've personally found. It keeps me in a positive headspace. And so having that as like an outlet, but just kind of reinventing how I do that.
Yeah.
It's always been like.
Yeah. No, go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so you mentioned two things. So you mentioned kind of the fear of it getting worse if you're stressed, and therefore you feel the need to stay positive. And then you also mentioned volunteering keeps you positive. Is there anything else? And maybe, you know, this might be something that if someone out there is going through MS and possibly finding it really difficult to stay positive, especially considering when you said your situation, it was constantly evolving and changing. You have to keep adapting to it. How can people kind of stay on that positivity track? As in, what do you think helps, or maybe what advice would you give? What works for you?
I think the first major step was coming to terms with it, and like knowing that, like Kareem said, like it's not a case of wanting to get better, because if you set that as your goal, then likelihood is you're not going to achieve that goal, and it's just going to affect you, like your well-being even more. So it's about come to terms with it and like having a practical, achievable goal based on your new understanding of yourself.
So do you feel you've fully come to terms with it now, or is it still kind of too fresh for that?
I don't like. I feel like I'm still going through the journey, and I don't expect to ever kind of finish the journey that I'm going on, because it's like it's a lifelong thing, and even as it stands, I don't know how my condition will change over the next 1, 2, 3 years. So, like, until it reaches a point where like it stops changing, it's difficult to come to terms with it at any one point in time. But I think it's more a case of come to terms with the fact that things are likely to continue progressing, and come to terms with that as opposed to come to terms with my new situation. Because if I try to come to terms with my new current situation, then the chances are it's going to change again. Yeah. And so if I come to terms with the fact that it's changing, then I come to terms with something that is more likely, if that makes sense. So I'm coming to terms with the changes rather than a change.
And I know, I think you said something earlier that I thought was really like deep and profound, just around how like it's almost like your goals should be based on something that is stable rather than a fixed position that exists now but then it could change in a way. So it's almost like principle-based type goals. And actually really like reminded me of something that I was reading recently around how like, especially, you know, like in Islamic thought and like, you know, from a God's like Tawheed sort of based mentality, that like sometimes we like set objectives where the outcome isn't actually fully in our hands, and it's based on so many external factors. So even like you see in business or people who are successful, whatever, talking about their story, and so much has this, you know, right time, right place, right time, or a bit of luck, and we bumped into someone on a train, and then that led to and all that sort of stuff. So like your goals sometimes can't be fixed in terms of, it should be like an intention focus in terms of what your intention is, and you're going to have tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to get to that point. But whether that happens or not, you don't actually have full control over, because, you know, if it was, you know, I'm going to travel to 10 countries in 2020, and it's like, well, actually, you know, there's a global pandemic, so that's, you know, you won't be able to achieve that, for example. But it doesn't, that shouldn't change your intention, and therefore, like, having something that's sort of fixed, that, you know, for example, I'm going to have a positive mindset no matter what. Like, it's not about if this and then have a very detailed sort of criteria of that, because that's what sort of changes. So I just thought that was really, in terms of like building resilience, and that's applicable to loads of stuff. It's not necessarily just medical conditions, but yeah. So, okay.
I was going to say, I noticed on a couple of things that you just mentioned and what Jad mentioned. What you mentioned there, you and I suppose what I have mentioned as well. It almost feels like it's the end of a certain life and the beginning of a different life. So you had one type of life that this is what used to happen and what was seen as a norm. Now you have to reevaluate things and try this new life. And it's almost not quite a second chance, but it's quite and you don't have a choice on it. You can't say, well, I don't fancy that, I'll go back to what I was doing. And it also, what you do, I mean, a few things that you mentioned there resonated quite a lot. You need to kind of, like regarding positive mindset, I always, whenever I'm speaking about MS, I always say focus on what you can do rather than what you can't. So say, for example, God forbid, someone who was going to be a footballer got diagnosed with MS. Maybe there isn't any maybe, but they can't be a footballer anymore. That's going to cause them a major problem. So you need to focus on what you can do. So become a blogger, become a writer, do something that you're able to do, and then channel your feelings, your energies towards that. I mean, marketing, I suppose, is quite easy for you to channel and change your mind about what you did. But I was at an event called NADEX once. It's like one of the biggest disability events in Europe. Happens in Birmingham, usually on every year. And there was a guy there. He couldn't use his hands or anything, and he was painting these most beautiful paintings by his mouth. He had this brush in his mouth, and and there was the whole stall was covered with him, and he was doing it live there in front of him. And it's not like he'd gone away and done something, but he was doing it with his mouth, and it was quite humbling. When you think, God, there's me complaining because the battery on my scooter's not charged, or I wish I could go play football or whatever. And you see this guy, he can't even use his hands or his legs, and it's like, wow, it's quite a profound moment. So you need these kind of reminders, I think. And I mean, I suppose it leads everyone onto that question of why me? And everyone thinks, I mean, like you say, mental health. I suppose in a way it works against you, because as Muslims, you believe in God, and you believe that whether it's in your thoughts or your prayers, there is a medium there in which to communicate from, or there is an end game. So there's nothing wrong with asking why me. I think everybody asks that question regardless of, I mean, sometimes people have problems with the job or life or whatever it might be. Oh, why did this happen to me? It's a very natural thing to say. I mean, it's not a problem. It's a natural thing to say, why has this happened to me? Okay, and then take it from there. Because, and one other thing that you mentioned was, do you give up hope, and do you kind of think there's something that could happen? I mean, even though they say to me there's no cause and there's no cure, I kind of look at that the other way around. I think, well, if they don't know what the cause is, maybe I can stumble upon it, or maybe I can find the cure. I mean, even like crazy things. I mean, like I thought to myself, people was talking like, oh, Kareem, don't have the coronavirus vaccination, or this could happen. I was like, well, maybe one of the side effects could be that it cures MS, maybe, or something like wacky like that. Or maybe like, well, if I get corona, maybe it has some sort of reset function in my body and it kind of starts things off again. I mean, and I'm just really weird when it comes to that. I mean, like, I'm not giving up hope, but I suppose hope keeps you going. And it's a very strange way of looking at it. But it's a few things that you mentioned there were very, very something that I could relate to a lot. So yeah.
No, exactly. And I can see there's some comments that are like sort of coming in on the same sort of thing. You know, like everything that, you know, we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the best that we have ourselves, and so everything that we're sort of given.
Yeah.
You know, we've recently it was sort of the Muharram period and Arba'in, and you know, every year I sort of think about it, always gives another element of, you know, Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam saying like, "Ma ra'aytu illa jamila," like I saw nothing but like magnificence and like beauty, and I just think like when you talk about mindset and reframing and things like that, like these sort of role models after seeing something that's so difficult on the face of it, but being able to go so deep in terms of sort of
Yeah, definitely.
I learned blessing is such a from my
It's, that's the thing. It's so easy to say sometimes because when you're going through it, and not just our difficulties, but anybody. Do you know when you're going through a tough patch and someone says to you, "Oh, it's in God's plans. It's okay." You're smiling, and inside you're thinking to yourself, "Listen, mate. If you knew what I was going through, you'd think before you speak," kind of thing. And everyone goes through it, but you kind of have to kind of just. Well, it is true. We know it's true. But I mean, you're going through it. The last thing you need to someone to say, "Oh, it's just meant to be. Don't worry about it. It'll work itself out." And then, like, God is the best of planners, which he is. We all know it. But when you go through that period, it becomes quite challenging. But I think that's what I think when you see examples around you, it helps. I mean, like we've just come through Muharram and Arba'in, and when you relate to what happened at Karbala and what happened to the families, I mean, these are real people. I mean, it's a story to us now, but they actually went through it. They actually saw family murdered, massacred, whatever you want to say. They saw it. They went through it. They had to walk to Sham in places. So it's hard to relate to them because you think, oh, well, they're chosen people and they're doing okay now or whatever. But there is that part where you need to think about how you can use people's examples in your own benefit. I remember not recently, it's probably about 8 years ago. I don't know if you know it, there's a place in Manchester called the Curry Mile or Rusholme or Wimslow Road. I was going to say, if you don't know it, I'd be very surprised. But I think everybody's been there, and I was just going around on my scooter, and I always get strange looks when I'm on my scooter, especially in our Asian community, because I suppose people are not used to seeing people as much on scooters. But this guy stopped me who stood outside the restaurant. He says, "You're very lucky, you." And I says, "Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks." So I was just kind of trying to get out of there before he weirded me out or something. And he kind of said, "Yeah, you're very lucky." I says, "What do you mean?" And he says, "If you were in Bangladesh or India right now, you'd be walking down the street with your hands." And I was like, thinking, he's exactly right. I mean, we've all seen the Indian movies or the cultural films where that guy's got bandages on his hands walking down the road, and he's right, that would be me. But in this country, we're lucky to have accessible venues. We've got cars you can convert to drive with your hands. I mean, that's what I do. I have a car that I drive with my hands, don't use my legs. And there's so many things out there that we should be grateful for. The scooter, having a wheelchair. I mean, if you walked up to someone in that country walking on the street with their hands and gave them just a clapped out wheelchair, they'd be amazed and forever thankful. And here we are with so many things around us and still like, oh, well, it could be a lot easier. Why does it happen to me? So I suppose that comes full circle, but seeing what other people are going through and learning from those examples, it kind of not humbles you, but gives you, I don't know what the right word is, but you know what I'm trying to say. You kind of understand it a bit.
Yeah, it's all different perspectives, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's a better way of putting it.
You know, you were saying that it's a lot easier for people who don't have that specific difficulty to give advice and say, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is best of planners, he knows best. A lot of things that people hear is like, this is a test and all this kind of thing. So from you guys, because you're actually going through it, what advice would you give to, for example, a friend or family member if they knew someone going through this? What would help them and what wouldn't? So we know what wouldn't help them is these kind of comments. But what do you think helps? What kind of support do you want to get from people when you're going through a difficulty like this?
I mean, just to clarify, when people give this type of advice, I understand it and I appreciate it because it's better than ignoring you. But what I would say, just to answer your question, is like, just ask them, "I'm here if you need me. If you need any help, let me know. If not, I'll leave you to it." So I think that helps a lot, because sometimes people will see me struggle with my scooter, getting it into my car, but it takes me 5 minutes to do that. And it doesn't look very pretty, but that's the way I do it. But if someone's with you, they're like, "Oh, shall I help you? Shall I try to help you?" And so I think if you're with someone or with a friend or family or whatever, the best thing is just to say, if I seem like I'm struggling, don't worry about it. If I need your help, I'll let you know. So that way everyone feels at ease, because the person who sees you, they want to help. And it's just a natural reaction for anyone to help, which is good. But you want to just say to them, okay, this is when I need help. So that's what I do when I go out with my friends now or anything. They know the routine. If they need, I'll say, oh, just grab this for us or do this for us. So it's very dependent on. So that's the advice I'd give. Kind of clarify to the person who's your person with you or person who looks out for you or friends and family who might be directly affected with it, and just say to them, if I need you, I'll give you a shout. Otherwise, don't worry about it. I'm used to it. And it's simple as that.
Yeah, no, mashallah. Again, I'm just looking at some of the comments of some of the people that, here have been, I think, 10 years diagnosed, since diagnosis and still diagnosed. And yeah, I think something I always sort of think about is that there's all this element of each person is different as well. So, as in your advice, Kerry, might work with you, but then not everyone actually wants that sort of treatment, and some might have a very different sort of treatment. Like Ayad, I don't know if whether you your perspective is different or similar to what Kerry was saying, because I think that's all to be cognizant of. It's not like there is a checklist of this is how people that prefer to be treated. Don't say this, don't do's and don'ts and stuff like that, because we're all individuals.
Yeah. No, I think sometimes I myself have to be careful of the fact that there's a certain I very much appreciate all the help that people offer, but then I feel like I start to get complacent when people don't offer me help, and it's a weird thing to say, but like I'll for example, I'll be struggling to make it from one side of the room to the other to grab something, and it won't be obvious that I want someone to step in and say, let me go grab that for you. But then more often than not, it'll be on my mind, and I'll think to myself, why isn't anyone offering to go grab me that thing? But then you begin to realize that people can't read your mind, and if you are to ask for help, more often than not, people will be more than willing. But even around the house, so obviously my family is different to other people. Even around the house, if for example I'm downstairs, then I'll ask if I want to get something from upstairs on my phone or whatever. I'll ask my mum or my dad or whatever, and they'll go get it for me, and they'll do that without hesitation, and I won't have any kind of shyness to ask them. But I think when it comes to other people, when it comes to being at events or whatever and asking for help, it becomes a lot more difficult.
I think when you said that, I learned that the hard way, because when I was working at Tesco, I did my best not to use my crutches at all, because they're used to seeing this manager stomping up and down the shop floor, making sure things are right. And then I was walking around like the hunchback of Notre Dame. I mean, literally using my body to walk, and didn't look great at all. And then finally, I plucked up the courage to start using this stick. And then when I saw one of my managers saw with the stick, I thought, they're going to say something. Oh, you're using a stick? He says, oh, about time, Kaz. I was going to say when you're going to start using your stick. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me earlier? The reason I wasn't doing it is because I didn't want the embarrassment. And then you realize the same is true with all the other things. So if someone wants to help you, that's the other good thing with MS. You become a better delegator. I mean, I remember years ago, I was a great manager at Tesco, but that was because I was a hard worker. Now I'm a great manager because I'm a great delegator, which is probably the better manager. Because there's no point doing that, because you can't do all the hard work yourself with MS. You need to tell other people, or you need to ask people's help. You need to get someone's help to do it. So I think it's in a weird way, it's come to pass that I've become a better manager and a better person because I had MS, kind of thing. It's a bit of a strange way of looking at it, but yeah, I mean, from looking at it from the perspective, I think you'll get better at it because people want to help you. And they're almost like, oh, shall I ask him? Shall I not? Shall I ask him? Shall I not? And they're playing with it in the mind. So if I'm at an IUS meeting now, and I see Eamon there, like I have in the past, I'll say, Eamon, could you grab me a drink? Or are you okay grabbing me some food? And that's less tension for everyone, because everybody's thinking, shall I ask him for help? Shall I not?
Yeah.
And you kind of cleared the air and made it easy for everyone. And people want to do it anyway. So it's not like you've asked them just to nip up to Scotland to buy some food for you or something. I mean, it's a little thing that makes everyone's life easier, but that comes with time, and obviously pride gets in the way of that. But
For
like
the
I say,
record, if you want anything from Scotland, anytime. So that just maybe when the fuel crisis calms down a bit.
It's all right, we'll get the train.
Yeah.
I guess
Well,
maybe so time. I think I feel like we could talk about this for a really long time, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of time. But I think we're really keen on trying to understand your experiences within the community. So having MS, how that impacted you, sort of your experiences in terms of people's perception of it, and how they've been towards you, and maybe how accepting they've been, or how inclusive you you feel people are within our community, how difficult or easy it was to, for example, attend events that you always used to attend before. Did you feel like that was a massive barrier, for example, and how can we be better? There's loads of questions, sorry.
Yeah.
Feel free to just...
And on the topic of questions, just if there is people sort of listening in, if you've got questions as well, feel free to sort of add them in through, I think there's a question and answer sort of function. And even if we don't cover it today, then maybe in follow-up sessions, we'll definitely keep those stored for them as well.
Even if anyone, because I know that it seems like a lot of people, a few people have, have got MS themselves. So if you have any suggestions as to how we can be better as a community and more inclusive, then feel free to pop it in the comments, and it'll be nice to hear your perspective.
Well, so I feel like in my case it was really weird because I was diagnosed, and then shortly afterwards we went into lockdown. Before lockdown, I was cycling, I was walking normally, and then lockdown happened. I didn't see anyone for a year or so, and then I came out of lockdown, and suddenly I had a wheelchair. So it wasn't a case of everything was Zoom online. It was on Zoom, and so it was very easy for me to attend what I wanted to attend. And so I know Kareem will be in a much better position to speak about all this because of his experience compared to mine. But it's only now, over the past few months, I've started to kind of reintroduce myself into the world as new
as a new AF.
And it's obviously it's only with time that I can work out what I need, what provisions I might need, or how things might need to be different for me. And so I guess so with regards to the community, I don't have experience in the sense that I don't know whether the community will or will not provide for my situation or will cater for me, because I haven't been in that situation enough to kind of pick out faults in the community and say they're not doing this properly or they haven't helped me here properly. But then it is kind of, I guess, the community having an awareness that there's me, but then there's also so many others who might be going through difficulties, who need to be kind of reintroduced into the community, but they're in a position where it's kind of you feel anxious to do it, and you won't be able to realize or to understand that feeling of anxiety that you have trying to reintroduce yourself into society, into the world, into the community. And I guess it's a case of the community making it as unweird for me as possible, and trying helping me through this journey and helping assimilate myself back into the community. But yeah, as I said, as it stands, I don't think I have the experience with the community enough to be able to say I have or haven't been given the help I need. And so I'd hand it over to Kareem to talk more about this, because he has a lot more experience than I do.
Yeah, I mean, my experience with the community has been quite eye-opening, actually, from both parts. I mean, initially I was very apprehensive, didn't want to use my stick or my scooter because you don't really see people with scooters and sticks walk, especially with a wheelchair going into a mosque. I don't think I've ever seen one in my life, to be honest, until quite recently. So I was like, God, shall I do this? Shall I not do this? And I mean, like, especially at IUS, I was like, well, what do I do? Because I was quite involved with the Manchester community, and there'd be hundreds of people coming. We'd be responsible for looking after them. And from going from that's from the stick to the scooter, I was like, I'll just hang out at the back and just keep an eye on things. I can still do what I need to. And one of my friends who's like part of the setup there, they said to me, Kareem, why don't you just pray? I said, I'm not really sure. He says, well, this community is yours as much as it is anybody else's. And that sentence kind of pushed me further. I kind of thought, right now, when you come to like the Majalis in Manchester or whatever it might be, I'll be in the Jama'ah, taking my place because I've learned the rules. One of the biggest places that broke down the barriers was for Jummah Namaz, where I live close to Bolton, so I used to go to this place called Markaz Ahl Bayt in Bolton, and it had a ramp to get in, so I was like, all right, that's really good. And and at first I wasn't sure, but they did their research, I did mine. They said, well, when you walk in and you've done the equivalent of 20 steps, your wheelchair, your scooter is considered like to be okay. So you can just go in and pray. We've got disabled toilets here, showing me around to the disabled washrooms and stuff. And I was like, wow, this is really empowering. They kind of know their stuff. But I've also had the other side of things where I've gone into a mosque and two people have come to me. One of them's grabbed my leg, the other person's grabbed my shoes, helped me start taking my shoes off. And I'm like, what's going on here at all? But it was like that caring. I mean, I suppose the dirtiest part of any human is the shoes. You're not going to take someone's shoes off. You're going to shake their hand or tap them on the shoulder, but to grab someone's shoes that you don't know, I mean, that's, once again, very humbling, very nice thing to do. But I think as a community, we want to go the other way where we're empowering and giving autonomy. So rather than having someone who's going to take my shoes off, which is an amazing, I mean, I'm not an old grand person or some religious scholar. I'm just some average person, and he's there helping me take my shoes off. But I learned the rules, and the rules are as long as I stay on my scooter and I've got in the equivalent of 20 steps and I can stay on that and I can pray. So that's fine. So once again, it's learning the rules and knowing what it is, and educating other people and empowering others to understand the same. And I think that's the way we need to go as a community, because I'll give you one example. I know time's pressing and there's probably other things you want to ask. But one of the best experiences I had was when I went to Umrah. I was on my scooter and I was thinking, how do I do this? As soon as I got towards where the Haram is and ready to do my tawafs, one of the police or the executives or the workers there, they said, right, how do you want to do this? If you want us to push you in a scooter, these chaps in the green and whites will help you. If you want to use one of our wheelchairs, they're over here. Big sign, everything's there. If you want to go on your own, go around this way. This is the way that you need to go so you don't get involved in a stampede or something. And that was great. So he handed it over to me, pick and choose whatever I wanted.
Yeah, you had options.
And there was options. And inshallah, I'd like to, inshallah, when I get the chance, I'd like to go to Ziyarat and have the same options, hopefully, or have the same experience. And if we don't have it, let's kind of help the community, educate the community, and talk about how we can do this and how we can become better. I mean, I could go into a lot more depth and talk a lot more about the community aspect, because I think that bit's huge, but it's a two-way street. You need to help yourself, but you need to help others to help you, because they don't know what help you need. And I think maybe in certain aspects we're playing catch up. So if you went into a church or a synagogue, there might already be a setup. But what about ours? Do we have these setups? But like I say, the example I had in Bolton, they even said, well, Kareem, if you don't want to sit on your scooter and you're sitting on a chair, we've got these the curved wooden tables so you can pray on them.
Raised,
the raised tables. So we have this. We're going in the right direction. We just need to formalize it more rather than make it informal, and that will encourage more people to bring. Because there's a lot of disabled. I mean, like nowadays, I see a lot more people coming in, whether they're using crutches or wheelchairs, and but it's moving in the right direction. But I think we just need to make something a bit more formal. I don't know how it works. There must be funding out there for mosques and places of worship to become more accessible and have the opportunity. Because I mean, it's hard enough running centres and mosques in the first place. So if they had the assistance, or maybe we wrote some sort of document to help, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not exactly sure how it works, but we're going in the right direction. But there's a couple of examples I gave from my experiences in the community, and yeah.
I suppose a good. So someone asked. I'm just trying to look at the comments as well. The most recent one was, "How can we act as a community? What's the first step?" And I suppose one of the first steps could just be, raising awareness about people who have disabilities, or certain requirements that they might need that we're not catering for.
Well, I think you're right in a way. I think what we need to do as a community is just do things as if it's a norm. So we don't have to say, how do we cater for disabled people? We just have it on a checklist. So if you're running an event at Muharram time, right, okay, have we got the food ordered? Have we got the drinks ordered? Has someone picked up the speaker? Has someone manning the bookstall? Who's doing this? Who's doing that? And accessibility has to be on there.
Yeah.
I mean, we're very lucky at the moment. I mean, I suppose lucky in a way, I suppose it depends. But the word equality is becoming very big, whether it be for different minorities or disabled people or whatever. And I suppose disabled people haven't been at the forefront of it, but we're jumping on that crest of the wave and just going for the ride. So why not take the opportunity? So when we have these checklists at our centres, accessibility and disability should be part of it. I mean, even when I go to Muslim events and I use the disabled toilets, you can just tell they've been using it for wudu. It's like a swimming pool in there. I mean, that's not clean. I mean, I think the events I've been to, the IUS banner, I always remember it says cleanliness is a part of faith. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, it's one of his hadith. And I mean, and it's the most disgusting place I've been to. So I know now, don't go to a Muslim event if you want to use a disabled toilet, because people think it's a good chance to do wudu. And I mean, not just normal wudu. I mean, it looks like they've had a bath in there, and it looks terrible. So I think we need to just bring accessibility as part of the checklist. So when you're asking who's picking up the speaker, ask, has someone checked all the facilities? Is the lift working? Are the toilets, is the handles fixed in the toilets, or whatever it might be? I mean, in IUS are very forward thinking in this. I mean, I've attended many IUS events, and always accessible, lifts are always there, or you can see that provisions have been made. But I think a dead easy checkpoint would be, we'll make a list of all the things we need to do, almost like a risk assessment. And we're all used to these things, so make a list. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. You might have 10 things regarding accessibility, and every single one of them is a red or you've not done. So, okay, how do we improve these 10 things? Do we do it ourselves? Do we get the funding, or how does it work? But that would be my first step. Add it to your things to do of what you'd normally do, and make it a norm. Once it becomes a norm,
it's not an activity within itself. It's
It's
just
a
how you do
standard
stuff.
procedure.
if you treat it like a special circumstance, then it'll probably make people like me and Ayad feel even weird. Like, oh God, I know they've done this for me just because everyone. As soon as I walk in, everyone's pointing at me saying, "Oh yeah, there's your seat," kind of thing. But it shouldn't be like that. It should just be part of the system. So if I go to the Trafford Centre, there's no special wheelchair lanes or anything like that. I can go anywhere I want because it's been made in a certain way, so you feel, I suppose, normal almost. So I think that would be my first step. Make a checklist, and I'll be more than happy, and I'm sure Ayad will be happy to give our input onto that. And maybe something IUS could sponsor actually, but almost be the front runners on it. Sorry, I nearly pulled my phone off the socket.
Like on the flip side, because I think that part of it, you said, is like the equality driver, like in terms of diverse teams, and like IOS has always had this thing like different community backgrounds and different ethnicities.
Yeah, very forward-thinking organisation.
Because you get that different perspective and insight into cultures, and trivial examples of like what type of food do we choose, because we don't want to be like alienating specific people for specific reasons. And to understand that inclusivity, you need people to be part of it, right? And like I sort of think so, almost like pushing it back in terms of like to yourselves as well. And I know that you guys are sort of active in the community, but like we need everyone to be active in the community to be able to provide that, because it might not be the first thing I think of about lift access. And therefore someone who actually has that understanding can say, this is how we need to do stuff this way. And that that's where sort of the beauty of that diversity comes in.
But maybe thinking out loud, maybe when I worked with IUS on these accessibility requirements, maybe I should be taking this and passing it on to other bodies like the Muslim Council of Britain or the
Yeah.
Manchester Council of Mosques and putting it on their agenda once it's on the agenda. Because I've had other experiences in Manchester, like I think the British Muslim Heritage Centre. I mean, that was fantastic as well. Very organised, very this. Toilets always clean, everything's great. So you've got different places, but then again, I suppose it's once again it's a two-way thing. So if I put it on their agenda, maybe then they'll know about it. And once again, if you don't tell someone, they don't know. So
Yeah.
they don't realise they've missed it. Maybe it's not, like I say, maybe culturally it's never been part of our agenda or however you want to phrase it. But we can't just always point to the organisations. Maybe we can do things to help them.
Well, yeah, that's it. Like, because of, as in, it's almost like a chicken and egg. Like, does the organisation accommodate first, and then it brings in these people, or is it like? I think it's just the openness and that comment around you owning it as much as anyone else in the community. Like, there isn't a criteria to be a volunteer that might be ruled out due to sort of medical conditions.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that makes a massive difference. And again, I remember, like, good and over like a decade, I was at an event, like an Islamic lecture. And there was sort of the speaker stood up doing the lecture, and then next to him there was someone doing sign language, and there was quite a few deaf people. So I thought, oh, that's really amazing. I just thought, oh, in our community, I don't think we have much deaf people. But then I thought, hang on a second, like, why would they see a deaf person at the mosque if we're not accommodating for them and there's no one doing sign language? And it was just a really obvious sort of thing, but just sometimes doesn't cross people's minds that, there's maybe a number of people that would benefit from having sign language at like an Islamic lecture. But if you don't accommodate them, then you're never going to see them, because then there's not a reason for them to sort of be able to sort of participate in that way, because you've not opened the pathway and the accessibility thing. So creating access and pathways is crucial, and that's where having those people come forward and sort of be part of it, just like any other volunteer, is really like an ask for us all, I suppose, like for us all to be educated. Again, that key word I think you said, awareness and education.
Yeah, I'm just looking at comments because there's some interesting ones. So this one I think we did cover, kind of what do you think Muslim organisations need to do more, and kind of comparing it to non-Muslim organisations, which can sometimes potentially be more inclusive. And then that person said, me personally, who has MS, don't feel like the Muslim community is ready for people like us. Someone said, I've been struggling with my balance and walking. Sometimes I can't control walking and holding anything. Sometimes I use a walker, but in public, just need a hand. Don't think I'm ready to walk. Someone also said to walk with a walker in public. And then someone also mentioned that at Amanati_UK is trying to raise awareness. So that's great. And then MuslimCouncil.uk has a group of organisations working together to raise awareness, doing webinars every month. So that's also great. Someone said, sorry.
I was going to say I attend them webinars.
Oh, do you?
Nice.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Do you find them quite helpful?
I think they've only just started, so
Okay.
it's interesting though. Like it's disabilities. So this is what's amazing is like this session, this podcast is we're only talking about MS or like physical disabilities. But like Emma said before, like there was a translator, and they were like, Ayman was like, well, there aren't that many deaf people, but then the deaf people don't tend to show up if they're not going to be able to understand.
Yeah, well,
But and like whether it's deaf or physical disabilities or whatever other disabilities, there are so many that we are just unaware of. And like when we think of disability, I think usually we think of like wheelchair, like the disabled badge logo is someone in a wheelchair. So like that's what we think disability is, or maybe that's what we tend to naturally think of when we think of disability. Like I think we're aware that disability is more than just physical disability, but just like in our minds when we think disability, we just think wheelchair, physical disability.
maybe do you want to tell everyone about the sunflower lanyard if they do see that?
Yeah. Okay. So sunflower lanyard. Initially, it was introduced to kind of show that you had an invisible disability. So when at the start of my condition, when I didn't need to use a walking stick, but my balance was really off, and like I stumbled a lot, and carrying things was difficult, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to carry something without falling over. I had a lanyard, and then a number of times, it got me the support that I needed. And I think you see them more and more often now. Like a lot of people are becoming more familiar with them, and
It's a good idea. I like that.
it's a green lanyard with sunflowers on it, and it just like it's just a sign to say that this person has an invisible disability. Obviously, going around in a wheelchair now, I still wear it. I still have it, but I think.
But you know, it's so important for everyone else to know that, because genuinely, like, and that's not like a scripted thing, or whatever. Like, if I saw you wearing a green lanyard and a sunflower, I just think that you like sunflowers, and that it's a cool necklace, and maybe that's a new trend that people are on that, you know, old people like me don't really know about.
I don't feel bad, but I didn't know about it until I just did.
Okay, that's good. But yeah, so that sort of thing. So again, that whole awareness thing of being someone that I think like has a nice sort of differently abled organisations. I don't know if they meant that as a way of saying like having their niche organisations that are sort of specialised for this, or the actual opposite, and that every organisation is a home for everybody, and that includes all sorts of abilities.
I like that phrase, differently abled, because it's it's a positive spin, isn't it? It's not saying disabled or accessible, it's saying differently abled, which plays into what we said earlier about the book about the unfair advantage. So what's your unfair advantage? Are you differently abled in what way? And I think I like that phrase. I'm sure there's a lot that can be done with that to push the message forward.
Yeah. And I suppose kind of relating to the topic of community and how we as a community can be more inclusive and more accepting, is like maybe the topic of marriage. So I don't know if you don't mind sharing your kind of experiences with marriage. Did you feel like it was a massive struggle, a barrier, and how can we improve your experiences, I suppose, and how can we be better in that kind of that field?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think marriage is one of those things that, unfortunately, it seems to be not a problem. It seems to be a struggle that a lot of people face within our community. You hear, like these days, I would think, because of all the technology and stuff, I mean, it'd be very easy to connect with people, to initiate a conversation, but it's actually hard. And I think people are, I mean, even able-bodied or anyone, basically, I think it's a challenge. In terms of when you've got a disability, I think it is something that crosses your mind. But then you see different types of inspiration around you, even like someone like Stephen Hawking. I mean, he's passed away now, but he had 4 children. I didn't even know that until I watched that film with Eddie Redmayne, and he kind of went through, and I read a bit about his story, and I thought, and then you hear about different things, and I think, like even when you think about starting a family, you speak to people close to you, and you ask the question, is it really worth me getting married and stuff? And you realise that when you take everything out of the equation, we're here to procreate as humans. That's almost our job. If we're lucky enough, or if we're privileged enough, or if we can procreate, we should aim for that. And if you've got a disability, as I mentioned, focus on what you can do. If it means if I can't run with my kid on sports day, I can drop him off every day to school, or I can go pick him up. So focus on what you can do. I think every father or every parent out there thinks, I wish I could do this a little bit better. I wish I didn't have to go work abroad, or I wish I didn't have to do this. I think there's something that everyone will have not a struggle, but will have something they wish they could do better. So I think from my point of view, it should be something that you talk about openly with your prospective partner, or these days, obviously, we've got all these websites. So put it on the websites. You don't have to physically walk up to every person and say, I have this disability and this is me. Because it's not the great opener, is it? So you can mention it in your bio, talk about the way your attitude is. And I think it's a very big part of life, because, I think it is for everyone, but I don't think it should put you off. But I think you should be realistic about it. So when I go out in my car, I know I need a place for my scooter, I need a place for my daughter, my wife, my son, and you need to kind of be not, I suppose practical is the wrong word, but realistic about it. What can you do? What can't you do? But you shouldn't do things that are they're going to be difficult for you. Like I said, if I tomorrow said I want to go out and be a footballer, there's no way I can do that. I mean, it's probably not the best comparison, but I think it's something that you need to just uh, do things according to what you can do. So there'll be many, many reasons why you think that I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't get married, I shouldn't have children. But I think you owe it to yourself to have a life. You can't live the life that other people expect you to live or other people want you to live. At the end of the day, I always say I'm only really bothered about what God thinks of me and what my direct family think. I mean, everyone else, if I do everything else, if I do things that the Lord is happy with, then everyone else will benefit anyway. I'm not going to do anything to hurt them or whatever it might be. So I think you need to kind of just, you owe yourself the life. So carry on living it. And I mean, I've seen examples of people I know within the disability community and how they've got together and where they go out, and you're like inspired. You're like, wow, that's really good. That, and it's great to see people take the can-do approach. But like you say, maybe like when you think to yourself, oh, for my 10, 20-year anniversary, I'm gonna walk down the Maldives with the sand in my feet, watching the sunset. Well, that's not going to happen. But maybe if I get the hotel to put an accessible pathway down the beach, maybe that and I could work it. So it's trying to work out the way what you can do. So I don't think you should let you hold it back, because you look back in years' time and think, oh God, why didn't I just try? Why didn't I give it an effort? Because if you don't try, and if someone says, oh, well, I find this is a problem, or it's not going to work, or families are not on board with it, because obviously we know within our cultures, whether it be Indian subcontinent, Arab, or whatever, marriage, I mean, the families are a big factor in any marriage. So there's always going to be not concerns, but there's always going to be opinions. But you've got to accept that is the case. So once you accept that that's the case, then just move on. And like Eamon, you said earlier, just own it and move on. I'm not going to pretend I'm Superman and I can fly when people aren't watching or something. Just kind of, this is the way I am, and just kind of get on with it.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, that would be I mean, it's such a big topic. I mean, I could literally speak, especially with culture, marriage, and all these kind of things thrown into the occasion. And especially if, like you say, being differently abled, or however we want to phrase it, that's a very, I mean, like I said, we could speak a lot about it, but I'm just trying to paraphrase little bits. I mean, as someone, I suppose, who's heading, inshallah, in that type of direction, I mean, what are your thoughts on what I've said? Or
No, I was gonna say, at this point, I just feel like I'm just one of the viewers, just watching this podcast, because like I have there's so much for me to take from that, so much for me to learn from Kareem. I'm not married yet. Whether or not I'm trying to get married is a different question. But like I do still have my whole life ahead of me. And there are so many things to consider, to think about, to kind of like you said, take into account. So I think it's similar to what I was saying earlier about having goals, which I like have to constantly readjust to suit the position I'm in. And it's like I said, it's like knowing that this is the position you're in, this is what you're able to do, not having unrealistic expectations of what you want to achieve. Like, I don't think it makes me any less ambitious if my goals don't seem on the surface as ambitious as they used to be. Like before, like 5 years ago, my goals were, if you were to compare goals back then to goals now, they seemed way more ambitious. But based on my position now, based on my circumstances, my goals back then and now are just as ambitious. But it's just they take into account what I'm able to do and what my position is. So like I never, going forward, I guess I never want to to limit what I hope to do, but also keep a realistic expectation of what I can do. It's like Karim said, I'm not expecting to be a footballer as much as it might be a nice thing. My plan isn't to become a footballer. But now maybe to say that I want to be a leading researcher in the field of psychology is just as ambitious as, say, becoming a footballer would have been 5 years ago. But now the position that I'm in and circumstances and I guess my course of academia and my condition, that's the new like pinnacle of ambition, I guess. It's much more tailored to the position that I'm in now. But I haven't become any less ambitious than I was before. It's just the goals seem less ambitious because they're just more tailored to what I can do now.
But this is like what I find really beautiful about what you're saying. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose, but it's not applicable. It's applicable to everyone. It's not a specific thing for people with a specific condition. Like, I like to play football as well, but that's not an ambition or a realistic expectation for me to sort of start my career in football. I know that that might sound like a bit flippant in terms of like sort of scenarios, but it's all about contextual like aims, and you think about like all the things that you guys are saying around. It's very much universal principles of us being both realistic in our expectations, and also it's what we talked about before about pushing and with our intentions. But they talk a lot about with like leadership, for example, how someone's constantly evaluating the environment they're in, and you can't really sort of stay sort of stagnant. And on this journey that we're all in around, like trying to basically fulfill our potential, and that potential, in terms of getting close to our last point to Ireland and sort of trying to sort of manifest that as great as we can, is constantly going to be hit by external factors and scenarios, and whether that's our health, whether that's things that happen around us, the health of our loved one, all sorts of stuff, and that's why, again, it's just so universal. So I think it's it's just very there's a lot to learn for everybody, basically.
I think what you were saying about last night, like I remember when we were kind of getting to know each other, I remember you said something that was really, it just stayed with me till now. You said, I don't know what she's about to say.
This is an announcement live for everyone on Instagram.
Let's hope it's a good one.
No, but you said that like people change, we can change, situations can change, but as long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always our constant, then we'll be okay. And I feel like that always resonates with me. As long as we're, we've got a constant. The constant is always going to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and nothing else.
Fixed anchor sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I thought that was really good. Well done.
We're still married years down the line, so.
So I think there was one question that came in. What's your biggest fear, and how do you overcome the fear?
Wow, that's quite profound, isn't it?
I love how there's always just got this sort of thing, and it's like
deep
bang,
question.
marriage. Let's talk about marriage. It's like
I don't know. I think it's a fear of failure, isn't it? A failure in your own eyes, like in your own mind, you'll have. I suppose this is for everyone really, because in your own mind, you'll have things that you want to achieve or things you want to do, and goals you set for yourself, and you want to just make sure you can go about doing that. And I suppose that's probably a big fear, that you don't quite achieve what you set out to achieve, even with these, like you say. As the thing is, it's very strange. If you ask a 12, 13-year-old kid what your aim is, you're like, well, I want to get locked inside a supermarket and eat all the sweets at night or something. I mean, that's what you want to do as a kid.
Yeah.
But now, as you grow older, you think, oh, you want to do this, you want to do that. And then as you get older still, once again, everything changes based on family, and you're more focused on other people and children rather than yourself. So it's always changing. But I think that'd be the biggest fear, failing in something that you really want to achieve whatever it may be for anyone, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to answer. I guess the idea of getting complacent. So Janan just mentioned like the idea of Allah being the constant, and with the disability or with any issues in life, it becomes very easy to want to like maybe give up or just kind of compromise on something, and you just like, oh, you say to God, oh God, you put me through so much already. I'm sure you wouldn't mind if I just like compromise on this. And like there are so many instances where that presents itself, that kind of dilemma presents itself.
I like what you said about the complacency, because it's very easy to, especially here in the West, getting very relaxed and what they say, in the routine, and like you say, when I suppose there is a bit of pleasure or to be complacent, because it means you feel content, don't you? I suppose content and complacent just has to, I suppose, you need to, I suppose, understand what it means to you to be complacent and to be content.
Yeah, and I think like going back to one of the points we made at the beginning of the show, that this idea of like it being a test, and like people say it's a test, but in my mind it's not the illness that is a test, because if it was the illness that was it, then what would the outcome look like? What would passing this test look like? So if my test was you've been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, that's your test. Like, to overcome multiple sclerosis, it would seem like the passing the test, like me being able to run again, I've passed my test of multiple sclerosis. But then that's not the MS itself is not necessarily the test. Like, the test is everything. Like, if the situation I'm in right now, I could very easily just start using like profound language, and like it's just the test is being able to navigate every situation that you're in. And so in my situation, the MS is not the test, it just happens to be there. My test remains the same, and it's just living my life as good as well as I could, or as well as I should.
Yeah, just respond to the situation.
Yeah.
So the situation is the variable, right? And that's the thing that's going to be slightly different. And yeah, like you say, it can present itself in different ways. And again, that's something, how everyone is on that sort of path of, like, you know, the sort of the life struggle and pushing yourself and trying to, again, fulfill your potential, which, you know, stepping out of your comfort zone to be better is not a comfortable experience, but it's part of that growth.
Yeah. I remember someone told me as well, like these things that people call tests, more often than not, they're not tests. They're like, it's more of an opportunity, because if you are dealt like an inconvenient hand, you can, I guess, react to it in one of two ways. You can either get annoyed at everything about it, like be upset and feel sorry for yourself and get annoyed at the world, or you can say, okay, things have been made more difficult for me. If I'm to continue living my life as a good Muslim, then the reward will be higher for me, because it's more difficult for me to do so, or like there have been barriers that have been put in my way. But for me to be able to stay on the right path is like something that is more difficult for me, will yield higher reward, I guess, and is an opportunity for me to get closer to Allah. And I guess there's even the idea of like, when you go through hardship, you do a lot of reflecting. So like the past 2 years, I've like reflected a lot, and I've explored religion a lot, and I've researched theology, and like all this kind of stuff came about only because I became disabled. And like Kareem mentioned earlier on, one of the questions is like, why me? Like, I was very active before, and I thought I was doing everything in the way of Allah, and I was trying to be a good member of the community and of society and whatever. And then this came along, and like, for someone to tell me that Allah tests the ones He loves, well, it's like, well, I was already doing so much for you, God. Why are you gonna make it more difficult for me to try and serve you? But like I said, it was an opportunity. It presented itself as an opportunity. So maybe, yes, I can't volunteer in the same way that I used to volunteer, but then that opportunity for like my own personal growth and reflection and self-development wouldn't have been possible. The opportunity wouldn't have arisen if this didn't happen. Yeah, I guess that whole journey needs like a whole other podcast.
But we'll do a part 2.
I think so, and I think it's a really good place to end, basically, because I think there's a lot of take-home messages, if you like, in terms of what you were just saying, and I think, yeah, if we could go on for so long, and there's lots of things to really sort of drill down into and get into sort of more detail, but I'm wary that, I think we said we'll be around an hour or something, but we've usually clocked over that. And I think it's definitely worth something sort of pursuing, inshallah. But very wise words to sort of end on.
Thank you both for your
Can I just make one point? On my Instagram, I haven't been able to see the comments, so the comments haven't shown up for me. So I don't know if there are any comments that were aimed.
I think you can catch them later and you can reply individually if you want.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I don't know if I can get hold of them to
I think does it automatically go to IGTV? This doesn't it? I think the upload.
Oh,
yeah,
I think so.
And we're going to be sort of uploading to YouTube as well. But I think we'll definitely capture sort of any of the comments or questions that we feel didn't really get into enough detail.
Yeah, just in case. I don't want anyone to feel as though I ignored them, because it's just it hasn't.
Oh no, don't worry. I've not been answering any questions. It would have been too much for her to type in, look at camera at the same time. But no, I'm sure we'll be able to go through them later and reply as appropriate.
Inshallah, no, exactly. And I think I'm sure both of you guys are open. I think you're obviously tagged in this, so
yeah, absolutely.
Or if they end up pick up with you sort of one-to-one, then that's definitely also an option. Inshallah.
No, thank you guys too, and IUS, and obviously the Voice of Unity team for putting this new, exciting project underway. And inshallah, we've done it justice on the first episode, so inshallah, there's many more to come.
Definitely, no. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you, Ayad and Brother Karim, for both sort of being part of it. And yeah, as I say, I think we'll definitely see you guys soon, inshallah, for another episode. But thank you again for everyone sort of who tuned in and do.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who tuned in. Really appreciate it.
Sort of further events or further topics that you want to sort of pick up on. But I think other than that, Jazakumullah khair and.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, enjoy what's left of the weekend, inshallah.
Yeah. I'm not sure what buttons to press. I'll leave it over to you guys to press the right ones. So I don't.
Okay.
Take care, yeah. Take care, man. Take care. Assalamu alaikum. Bye.